Hello everyone, this is Aesthetic Gameplay, and instead of some gameplay footage, I just want to talk a little bit about the Showdown series online. And I want to make a lot of complaints and criticisms, but I'm going to try to do it as intellectually as possible, you know, logically, the kind of logic that makes you say, hey, you know what, he's got a point, we should probably make those changes to make the game more fair, fun, and accessible for everyone. Now I want you to keep in mind, I'm not talking at all about the free roam and the griefing. I could care less about that. I don't give a shit if I'm in the middle of doing something, I die and I lose progress, blah blah blah, don't care. Doesn't matter. I think in that sense people need to toughen up a little bit and get better, because you have to keep in mind, everyone's on the radar, and you can always be ready. I don't know what the fuck this guy's doing right now. He's being fucking troll right now. And I really don't care. He's the dumbass who's about to die. And I'm missing all my shots because I'm a dumbass. I don't know why I'm missing my shots right now. There we go. Jesus. Anyways. So I'm going to start by listing off, you know, everything that I think is wrong with the online and what needs to be done. And personally, I didn't even prepare a script. I am just going off of the top of my head. But let's start with the first and biggest thing that needs to be worked on, and that is the radar. The radar in this game is not nearly as useful as it used to be in Red Dead 1 or even GTA 4 and 5. People showed up on the radar way more often, and you had time to prepare yourself, defend yourself. In this game, people show up on the radar far less often than you would think. And that is a problem, and I'll tell you why. The movement in this game is very, slow. It takes a while for your guy to, to run around and to aim and to dive. It's all, pretty slow. And when you get hit by someone from behind, and you never knew they were there on the radar, you have very little time to defend yourself. Because let's say, for example, you get shot from behind, and he wasn't on the radar. So you dive, you turn around, and by the time you dive and finally turn around, your aiming will be swaying, and you have a very little chance of killing the person anyway. So when that guy shot you from behind, he automatically was granted like a 90% chance of winning the fight, just because he simply had the advantage of being behind you, and you didn't know he was on the radar. And that's just incredibly unfair, because most people die from just getting shot in a direction where they never saw anyone and they were never on the radar. And it's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty unfair.
How do you do?
And I think that about sums it up for the radar thing. I will say that there needs to be more conditions that make people show up on the radar. Like if you crouch and you're walking around, okay, fine, you're not on the radar, that's fair. But even if you're jogging around everywhere, people should know where you are. If someone's coming up behind you around the corner, you should know that that person is there. Because to even take the time to turn around and be prepared to defend yourself at least takes one whole second. And that is a lot of time when you're playing a shooting game.
Whole lot of ugly business here.
And I think that's a good summary of it. But let's move on to the next big problem that needs to be addressed, and that is the swaying, which I already mentioned. So you get shot at, your aiming gets swayed. Let me show what I mean by that in case you don't know. When you get shot at, you start moving around like this, and you cannot control your aiming at all. And so when someone shoots at you from behind, and let's say you manage to turn around and you get a lock on them, that probably already took you a whole half second. And yet they couldn't even punish you in time. So the fact that you managed to turn around and lock onto them, that's already an accomplishment in and of itself. But what makes it such an insult in this game is that even if you manage to turn around and lock onto them, you can't even shoot them in the head because your aiming is swayed. And assuming that the person who shot at you is a competent player, he can get an easy headshot on you. So you literally won't have time to defend yourself. And even if someone is shooting directly in front of you, before you shoot them and your aiming gets swayed, I mean, that's basically unfair. Because what the game is saying in this sense is that the moment you fire the first shot, you automatically win. Now, granted, it's not like that 100% of the time. There are times where you get shot at and your aiming is not swayed and you can still defend yourself. But I would say at least 75% of the time that is the case. So that means if you get shot at by someone you didn't see on the radar, there is a 75% chance your aiming is already going to be swayed and that your death sentence has basically already been served. And that is just a huge problem, because you can't defend yourself. Like, I remember when I would play free-for-all matches and such, and I would get first place like 25% of the time, because it really just came down to luck. For the most part, it really did, because you don't see anyone on the radar, you never know where anyone is half the time, and the only way to properly defend yourself is to look at your vision like this. Is what I mean. Just looking around. Like a full 360 degree vision observation, however you want to call it. That's the only way to truly defend yourself. And it is nice that when you see someone, like in the distance, for example, they show up on your radar. That's nice. But let's say you just keep looking and looking like this. If you pass by someone, like let's say someone's on that bridge, right? If you pass by them quickly, there's a good chance they won't even show up on the radar. And also, let's say that you were looking around like this, and the moment, see, let's use the bridge again, for example. You're looking, and the moment you look away, someone can come out. And so you have to wait until you come all the way around again to see him again. But by that time, you have already been shot at, your aiming will have already been swayed, and your death sentence will have basically been served. And that is just blatantly unfair. That's just completely wrong. It's an ethical travesty for shooting gameplay. I mean, this isn't freaking Call of Duty where you can do an instant 180 shooting your fast fire rate gun. This isn't what this is. This is a slow, methodical game. You pull out your weapon, you cock your weapon, you lock on, you wait for the bubble to settle in so you can get that headshot. Even though it happens quickly, like some people can make it look fast, but it's actually a very methodical process. And to have that methodical process compromised by a faulty radar and by having your aim swayed, basically being like having your fate in the hands of luck, essentially. That is just ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous. In GTA 4, GTA 5, Red Dead 1, people are on the radar almost 100% of the time, and your aiming was never swayed. So when someone shot at you from behind and you were lucky enough to not die, you can turn around and punish them, and they deserve to be punished. They're shooting at you from behind, and they couldn't kill you, and you actually managed to turn around a full 180 degrees and begin shooting. You deserve to be able to punish that person. But this game has taken away that ability. If you get shot at from behind, there's a 75% chance that, well, you're fucked. Unless, of course, the player is very incompetent, you can spin around, shoot in the body a few times and win. But the odds of that happening in that period of time is still incredibly low. So regardless, it's always bullshit, and it is highly luck-based. And that is why I have to use these ability cards to compensate this one. While Deadeye is active, you take less damage, and headshots do not kill you outright. What's also good about Deadeye is that when you go into Deadeye, your aiming stops swaying. So if I'm shot at from behind, I have no choice but to turn around and activate this very cheap card. It's very overpowered, but only to stop my aiming from being swayed. And the fact that I have to go to that extreme just to defend myself is extreme. It's unfair. And then this next one, your hat will block one headshot and fall off. This is another incredibly cheap perk, but it is so necessary because the odds of me getting shot in the head by someone I never knew his presence, never on the radar, is literally like, it can range anywhere from 30 to 80% depending on where you are. And it's like, those odds are atrocious. Those are the most atrocious odds I have ever heard of in a game. At least I think. Maybe I'm being exaggerated a little bit right now, but regardless though, it's still like incredibly ridiculous. So I have to wear this perk to defend myself. And I wish I didn't have to, but that's the way it is. And it's like you have to wear these cards, which are extreme in a beneficial way, to counteract the extremes in the negative way, the design of the game. So I have to counter one extreme with another extreme in order to make the game more balanced. But I will have to say that my ability loadout, it's more beneficial than the game is negative. I will say that, because I'm not even lying to you guys whatsoever when I say that I have won at least 90% of all my free-for-all matches ever since I started that ability loadout. And that's ridiculous. I wish that wasn't the case, because when I played Red Dead 1, if I was in a lobby with a guy who's as good as me, it was always 50-50 who would win. But now, the odds of me winning are more than 90%, because I have no choice but to wear these overpowered perks to counteract the incredible faultiness of the design of the online matchmaking. That is absurd. That is completely absurd. Incredibly imbalanced, and it needs to be addressed when this beta is over. And I hope Rockstar sees this. Like, if you guys agree with me, leave a comment just telling me, yeah, man, I agree, but you should also consider this, blah, 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 da, da, da. You guys should totally do that. Find a way to make this video reach Rockstar, do whatever it takes, because I think these issues need to be fixed. And I like to believe that I'm pretty spot on with these criticisms. If you think otherwise, that's great. Please provide me with logical reasons as to why I'm wrong, and I'm totally all ears. And let me start with my next complaint, and that is the cover system. The cover system is very slow and impractical in this game. It's only useful when you're taking cover behind a 90-degree corner. That's it. If you're taking cover behind, like, this fence, for example, people can still lock onto you through the fence, so taking cover is pointless, because while you're in the process of taking cover, they're going to shoot at you, and you're already basically dead. In Red Dead 1, they were smart about this. If you took cover, they couldn't lock onto you, so you had to be a lot smarter about where you ran out and where you took cover. It required a little more strategic planning. But in this game, let's say you take cover behind, like, a short box, and that box is at the right height so that when you take cover all the way, your head is still exposed. They can still lock onto you and blow your head off. So taking cover is totally pointless. And if you're taking cover around, like, just like a funny edge that's not a full 90-degree angle, that's a little smaller, then you're still going to be able to get locked onto and headshotted. So taking cover is almost pointless unless you take cover around a perfect 90-degree corner. And that's the only time that anyone ever takes cover. So the cover system is just about, I would say 75% pointless. Maybe I shouldn't go that far, because there are a lot of 90-degree corners to take cover on in this game. But it's still bad. It needs to be addressed. They need to make it, in my opinion, so that when you do take cover, you cannot be locked onto. That way there's a point to it, and everyone else has to play smarter. And, yeah, one last complaint. In this game, while you're aiming in, you press left on the D-pad, and you can look over your left shoulder, which is very useful. However, when you let go, you're automatically back to the right. And that's like a problem. Because let's say someone's coming around this tree. He's coming around this way. He's coming around like this. If I'm aiming around the right side, I have to move around to get a lock on him. If I come around this side, he will lock onto me before I'm able to lock onto him. So how do you fix that problem? You press left on the D-pad, and you can look around the tree, and you can lock onto him sooner. that's a problem, because at the moment you let go, you're right back to your right shoulder, which is bullshit. And another thing is that there is a way to counteract this, though. If you keep pressing the left trigger, you see how the little dot in the center is flashing? I'm repeatedly pressing the left trigger, so I can still snap lock onto people, so it's still useful. But let's say, for example, I get too close to the tree. You see how my gun is raised, pointing up right now. I cannot do the snap-on aiming. I can't do it, because the instant you let go of the left trigger, like this, you're right back to looking over your right shoulder, and that's bad. That's really bad. So you have no choice but to distance yourself just right so that your gun is still being aimed. And then you can do your snap lock on. And another really bad thing is that you have to press left while you're aiming. You can't just do it while you're standing here. So you have to aim first, look over, and then lock onto that person. And that process is very disadvantageous to yourself. It's impractical, and you have to be highly skilled, very quick to do it. But if someone's like right here, and they're running around the right side, like they're coming around, and they run around this right side like this. If I'm right here, for me to aim, press left on the D-pad, and then lock on, that whole process takes way too long, and it becomes unfair. You should be able to press left on the D-pad while you're just standing like so, and then just look over. But instead, this crap comes up. And they need to make this like a different button. Like the back button? Nope, that's first person. But like maybe hold down the back button. That'd be a lot smarter, because then you can use left to look over your left shoulder. You don't even need right. You could just use left. See, I'm only pressing left right now. And the same thing can be applied while you're standing. And they need to fix that so you can just pop in and out, or look left to right while you're not aiming. And that basically covers everything. Those are my 4 biggest complaints, and they all need to be addressed significantly. So like I said before, if you agree with this, if you disagree with this, let me know in the comments. Give me your constructive criticism. If you just loved it, leave a like, whatever. Make sure Rockstar sees this. They need to see this. This needs to be addressed, because otherwise this game is just going to be a maze of chaos and unfairness. And the only way to be good at the game is to be like a grandmaster skill level. And if you're not at that level, well then you're just stuck with the rest of the people who suck. And that wide imbalance is like, I don't know, I hate to get political here, but it almost seems reflective of how, the rich people have all the money. They own they buy and own the government, they buy and own the laws and all that bullshit. And then the rest of us are just slaves to it. That gap feels very similar to the gap that is in this game in terms of how good you have to be in order to just survive and play adequately. But of course, you can beat that exception by using the ability loadout that I have right now. But that's one of the only ways to counteract it. And it's unfair, and I don't like doing it, but I have no choice if I want to play well consistently. And that sums it up. I'm pretty sure it does. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, for listening. Please do your part. Do what you can to get the word out if you agree. Thank you all, and goodbye.